now we're good. So yeah, if you want to go ahead with your presentation, and what we will do for our replay is we'll just start it now, so that this way it'll come across clean for that. So again, Kenneth negotiates lease options, sale agreements, dispute resolution. He's a former associate director of Wharton Gladden, which is an investment banking firm, and Briscoe Capital Group, which is an oil distribution company. Kenneth is now a managing partner with Baker Collins that provides fix and flip, rehab loans, new construction, and multifamily loans. And we're going to talk hard money. So Kenneth, take it away.
All right, let's do this. So thank you. We got this taken care of. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and skip the pleasantries. Obviously, Dave has done that. He shared with you guys a little about who I am and what I've done and why I'm qualified to have this conversation with you guys. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're dealing with and working with somebody who's done this before. So about us, with this scenario, we like to make certain that people truly understand what they're getting themselves into when they get into hard money. Essentially, hard money, private money. I'm going to go back in between the two. Many people are familiar with the term of hard money, but that's okay. Private money as well. So you can boil down private money to essentially 5 bullet points. These are pooled private resources, meaning that we are not essentially tackling the public markets. We're not going after them. We're not essentially receiving our monies from them. These monies come from 3 folks, as I just mentioned earlier, whether it's an individual who's lending his or her own money for a decent return, or it's a group of folks who put their monies together, so therefore they can lend out and get a better rate of return. And of course, lastly, institutionally capital, whereas you've got a large groups of folks who are looking to essentially do bigger deals, and they have a structure and system that allow them to really kind of take advantage of what the market provides. Secondly, these loans are first lien position mortgages. We do not engage in second lien loans. There are some groups that do second lien loans. And what I mean by that is we're the first lender that gets paid back once the file is either sold or it's foreclosed. So it's very rare that a hard money lender is going to do that. We do not want to put ourselves in that type of position. Third, these are non-owner occupied properties. So I would say multiple times a week, I get a call and someone will ask me, hey, I want to use your financing to live in this property. And the answer to that I always have to give them is absolutely not. We cannot allow you to live in this property. As a private lender, we are prohibited in lending money to someone who plans on living in this property. By default, we only work with business owners and we only work with investors. If you are a real estate investor, whether you're looking to fix and flip a property, buy and hold a property, do a new construction project, you're somebody who our industry would love to have a conversation with. In fact, needs to have a conversation with. If you're someone who plans on living in this property at any given point of the transaction, we cannot do business with you. So the beautiful thing about being this is it lets me segue to the next part. These are commercial loans. So by definition, by them being commercial loans, we can only work with business owners. You have to have some type of entity, whether it's an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, something along the lines that shields you, that provides some type of corporate shield before you, as well as you personally. So the borrowing entity will actually be the borrower. The entity will be the borrower, but you will essentially have to personally guarantee this debt. The beautiful thing about these being commercial loans is it's very rare that this debt will appear on your personal credit report. And in many cases, most hard money lenders will not put this on your personal credit report. So it frees up your credit to go out and buy more properties. We have clients that have millions of dollars of loans out with us, and not one iota of that debt is shown up on their credit report. However, for many years, we've been teaching for a while, and I used to tell folks, well, the debt will never show up on your credit report. And I was wrong. That's not the case. It can show up on your credit report. And here's how. If a firm like us, if you default on one of the loans that we have outstanding with you, and we go to a foreclosure or there is a deed in lieu, God forbid, and there's some type of defaulted debt there, we could sell that defaulted debt, whatever we can't recoup through the sale of a foreclosure. That's called an efficiency judgment. We could sell the debt to another party, and that other party could report that defaulted debt on your credit report. So just be mindful. So whenever someone tells you that a defaulted hard money loan will never appear on your credit report, that's technically not true. There are groups that are doing that to prevent you from going out and obtaining new debt because they want you to pay their debt. That makes sense. Awesome. These loans are interest only as well as amortized. For the most part, today we're going to talk about renovation loans. We're going to talk about fix and flip loans. So fix and flip loans are essentially what we call bridge loans. They are short-term loans, meaning 6 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. You do not want to hold on to these loans more than 12 months. If you hold on to them longer than 12 months, something went awry, something didn't go right. And so we just want to have that conversation. And one of the reasons why I try to let people know or inform people that what we do is more of a private money scenario is we offer amortized loans, and those are essentially what we call permanent loans or stabilized loans. But today we're going to, for the sake of this discussion, we're going to talk about the interest only loans, otherwise known as the permanent, the private money loans, bridge loans, renovation loans, things of that sort. As a new investor, I'll answer some questions as well. I think Pam Perry had a question. What criteria should be used to determine good hard money lenders versus those that seem less? I think we're going to get into that too, Paris. I want to go into detail as to what that is. As a new investor, what I need to PG the loan? And Dan, the answer is more than likely yes. There are very few lenders that will offer what is called a non-recourse loan. Our loans are what we call recourse loans for new investors. All that means is responsibility. As a recourse loan, that means it's your responsibility to repay back that debt. If you have a non-recourse loan, that means it is not your, well, it's still technically your responsibility, but you don't necessarily have to do what is called a personal guarantee. But those are really designed for much larger projects. I know that there are some lenders that do offer non-recourse loans for new investors, but that does come with a little bit of a price. There's going to be a higher interest rate, may even higher origination fees and things of that sort. Just be mindful of that also. So Dan, to your question, yes. Yes, Alan Davis, we do asset-based loans as well. An asset-based loan, to kind of answer that, from whoever doesn't know that, what that means, an asset-based loan is essentially replacing the majority of the weight on the asset. And in some cases, we're not going to pull credit. We do offer that service as a firm. However, as a true asset-based firm, asset-based lender, in many cases, a credit is not going to be that weighted that heavily. But you do have to make certain that you'll get better pricing with financing when you do provide credit, because credit obviously shows that particular lender that you're a responsible individual. So if you want a true asset-based loan with no credit pull, that is definitely out there, that is definitely provided, but that does come with a little more pricey of a loan as well. So let's just go here. So one of the reasons why we created this class is because we want to kind of dispel the myths, and we dispel the rumors and dispel all the false narratives that are attached to our industry. So what many people think of what a hard money lender looks like is they think of a guy who looks like this. They think of a guy, let's call this guy Sal or Joe. Let's call him Joe, right? He's the average Joe. He's the person that he's the image that people have when you look at or think of a hard money lender. They're going to charge very high interest rates. Interest rates are going to be anywhere between 15 and 18%. They're going to want to loan you the money to own your property. So their intention is not necessarily to get their money back. Their intention is to loan you the monies at a certain loan to value. So therefore, they're hoping that you default to take back that property. So they're in a much better risk position, and therefore they have increased their wealth by taking back this property. They're going to charge you very high origination points. For anyone who does not know what an origination point is, it's one of two ways in which we as lenders are compensated. We are obviously remunerated, and that's a fee against the loan. And so those fees are going to be fairly high for what a lot of people believe. And the terms are going to be very inflexible. They're not necessarily going to be, lenient. They're not going to be very, they're going to be very strict with their terms. And so we want people to understand that our industry doesn't necessarily look like this. It's actually segued to look like this in a more consultative approach. We want people to understand that, gone are the days of the 15 to 18% interest rates. Those days, although there are some lenders who do offer that, for the most part, many hard money lenders are not going to kind of offer those rates. We want to be able to offer lower interest rates, lower origination points, very flexible terms, and a more consultative real estate professional. When you're dealing with a lender, that person is essentially your partner in this deal. That person, you are banking on this individual's years of experience, years of working on hundreds of deals, sometimes thousands of deals, and you're hoping that they're going to provide you some type of positive consultation or some type of not even necessarily positive, but you want them to provide you realistic expectations of what to expect. So consider them to be your partner. Consider them to be your debt partner, not necessarily your equity partner, but your debt partner. Lean on them, ask them questions. That's what they're there for. They want to be as much of a partner to you as you want to be as to them, and you want to be able to work and grow with this individual too. And don't be scared to ask questions. One of the things a lot of newer investors, they feel as if they are not going, they don't want to ask certain questions because they don't want to feel as if they're unintelligent. But that's the last thing we want you to do. I would be more open to receiving any question from someone than for someone to not ask the question and make a mistake. And mistakes in our industry are costly. They're costly because you have to deal with construction overruns. You're going to have to deal with permitting plans. Ask us these questions so therefore we can help you kind of grow your business together. So today our objectives are going to be very simple. What is a hard money loan? Why use a hard money loan? Why would you consider using Baker Collins to fund your deals? Deal scenarios and questions and answers. So we want to go into great detail about these items. We want you guys to truly understand the process and make certain that when you guys are considering these projects, that you truly just kind of make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to this as well. So what exactly is a hard money loan? You can ask multiple people and they'll give you different answers. For the most part, a hard money loan is a loan that's based on a hard asset. And a hard asset is real estate. And that's it. You'll have many people who will tell you, well, the interest rates are going to be higher, or the LTVs are going to be lower, loan to values are going to be lower. They don't, lend in certain neighborhoods, or they only lend in this neighborhood. Those things could potentially be true, but if you look at it from a general perspective, it is a loan based on a hard asset. The hard asset is real estate. The amount of the loan is determined by the value of the collateral or property. So we look at different things when we're underwriting a file. When we're reviewing a file, we're going to look at things such as the borrower's credit score. We're going to look at things such as the experience of the borrower. We're going to look at the credit score of the borrower. But what we place the most weight on is the collateral, is the property. Does this project make sense? And how do we define making sense? We look at the as-is value, and then we look at the after repair value. We want to make certain that you're buying this property, if it is a renovation loan, that you're buying this property for a fair price, for essentially market price. You're not overpaying for the property. And then we want to make certain that based off the renovations that you are going to perform on or execute on this property, what will it be worth once it's fully renovated? Those are the two biggest factors that we take a look at. All the other factors, such as credit score, experience, as well as liquidity, those will determine what your pricing and leverage will be. And when I say leverage, that's a banker term for how much money can I give you? What will your loan amount be? But again, the things that we look at the most is essentially the collateral. Does the collateral make sense? Does this property make sense? Our loans are based off of industry set percentages, again, against the current value or the improved value. One of the things that COVID did back in March 13th of 2020, obviously that was when COVID was declared a national emergency. interest rates skyrocketed, loan to values decreased because a lot of investors, a lot of the lenders were so fearful of the unknown of COVID. Then we were lending at around 50%, 65%, 60%. I mean, 60%. It was unreal. Things now have kind of gotten back to pre-COVID levels. So now we lend at 60 to 65 to 70% of the future value of the property. So we still want you to have a margin there to cover certain costs. And so throughout the course, you're going to hear me say things like, well, we're going to lend at 70% of the after repair value. We're going to lend at 70% of the future value of the property. All that means is we want you to have a 30% margin in this deal to cover costs such as financing costs and still be able to make a profit. And we lend at these LTVs and loan to values because we want to make certain that even with the financing costs that you're going to have to take on, we still want to know that there's a profit there for you. You got to have a profit. And, again, this is one of the reasons why we are more of a consultant. The lender that you're going to work with, you want to find somebody who's going to kind of walk you through these numbers to make sure that the deal does make sense for you. So we are in business because we do the deals that traditional banks tend not to want to do. Chase Bank, Wells Fargo Bank, Bank of America, all venerable institutions. We have relationships with all of them. Great institutions, in my opinion, right? However, they typically do not like financing deals for newer investors and renovation loans. If you were to go into a bank, any one of the banks I just mentioned, and you would sit down with a banker and you ask them, hey, I've got this property. It's in probably a challenged part of town. I've got a budget that I've estimated, and after the estimated budget that I'm going to renovate this property with, I hope to sell it for this number. That conversation is going to be a very interesting one for the banker, but they're going to be very specific and very direct, and they're going to probably tell you, well, this deal is not for us. And the deal is not for us is because traditional banks, they do not like taking on unnecessary risk. When they deploy capital, when they lend, they want to lend to predominantly move-in ready projects or rent-ready projects for newer investors. Now, if you're more of an experienced investor, and if you have a good amount of liquidity, they could set you up with a credit line, or they could set you up with some type of facility that allows you to do these type of deals. But as a new investor, your traditional bank is probably going to say no to this particular deal because it's a very speculative deal. There's a lot of speculation throughout a renovation project. There are a lot of variables that you have to contend with. And so we have to make certain that that once you get into these deals, everyone is realistic about things. So we do the deals that banks do not deal, but we're taking on a significant amount more risk than they are. And as a result, the interest rates are going to be a little higher. And those interest rates could actually range from, typically our interest rates range from 4.99% to as high as 13%. And so the difference between that number is the experience of the borrower, the credit score of the borrower, as well as the liquidity position of the borrower. So that's the reason why we're in business, because we can do the deals that banks typically do not want to touch. Our loans are fairly flexible. We close fast. You guys are watching this from many different parts of the country. Many of you guys are in major markets of specific states. We're here based in Atlanta. To kind of give you an idea, Atlanta is what we call a hyper-competitive market, as many markets are here in the States now. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal today. First quarter growth is up by 6.4%. That means the economy is doing fairly well. And so I'm saying all that to say, when you put a property, when you're trying to make an offer on a property, you have to make certain that you close fairly quickly. You are competing with not just your local pool of investors, you're also competing with the statewide investors, and you're competing with the national investors, and you're also competing with a lot of international investors, and you are also competing with folks that you don't even know you're competing with. They're called private equity firms. They're called hedge funds. These folks are buying properties in bulk. So there's a lot of competition in the markets that have the more densely populated markets in the States. And because of that, when you align yourself with a financial institution, you have to make sure that they're able to close relatively quickly. Now, one thing post-COVID has done is it has a lot of investors that were out of the market because of COVID are roaring back into the market, and that's essentially accelerated a lot of things as well. So our appraisals have been delayed across the country. We do deals all over the country, but we have to understand that some of the appraisals are taking a little longer to get deals done. So you're looking anywhere between a 10 to 21 day closing time in many cases, depending on what part of the country you're in. But for the most part, it's going to be 10 to 14 days to get this closed out. And so when you make an offer, you need to make certain that you can close on this deal and you're working with a lender that can close within a reasonable time frame, because you don't want to lose that deal. And it's not just losing the deal and losing what we call earnest money, but it's also losing the opportunity of making a significant amount of money when you either sell the property or refinance it into another piece of debt. Does that make sense? Awesome. So one of the things I like to do is I want to make certain, before we really get into the presentation, I want folks to really understand some of the definitions that are essentially used in our world. Many of you guys already know what every one of these definitions mean, or every one of these terms mean, but I really want to make certain that new investors really understand the very basic verbiage, very basic jargon that's used amongst the real estate community. Things such as interest-only loans, origination points, loan to value, total project cost, loan to cost, rehab draw, after repair value, maximum allowable offer, CMA report. Some of you guys know what every single one of those terms mean. Some of you guys don't know what any one of these mean. That's okay, because you guys will definitely know after this. And some of you guys may know what a couple of them mean. But I just want for our real estate investors to be on the same page. And we created this class because we saw that a lot of real estate investors were just completely unprepared when they were going to the real estate market. And so we just want to make sure that people really understand kind of what this stuff, what the terms mean. Interest-only loan. Essentially, an interest-only loan is all you're doing is you're paying just the interest on the principal balance, and the principal balance remains unchanged. There's no principal reduction. Essentially, you're going to receive a balloon within a certain term, whether it's 6 months or 12 months for a renovation loan, and it's going to be the same number that the loan amount will not change from when you originated the loan from when you actually needed to exit out of the loan. The benefit of that is it's simple interest. You can calculate it fairly simply. There's no prepayment penalty. So to kind of give you a very simple equation, you're going to take a $100,000 loan amount. You're going to multiply that by a 12% rate. And that's going to give you $12,000. So that assumes if you have this loan and you keep it for the full 12 months, your monthly payment will be $1,000 per month, but your monthly interest payments will be $12,000 a month, $12,000 over the course of a year. One of the things that you always want to be cautious of, cognizant of when you're in these deals, is your carrying costs. Your interest payments are going to be one of your biggest carrying costs when you're in a renovation loan. So I tell a lot of our investors that you don't want to be fast, you want to be efficient. Because if you're fast, you may miss something, especially as a new investor. You want to be as efficient as possible. And because efficiency allows you to reduce the possibility of errors and reduce the possibility of mistakes. Granted, obviously, speed is definitely one that you want to be able to kind of take on, but you want to be able to get out of this loan within a relatively decent time frame. Because every single month that you have to make another interest payment, that's another month that cuts into your profit. And at the end of the day, you should be in this to be profitable, because this is a business. And many investors don't realize this until they get into it. You have to be able to manage your costs. And if you can manage your interest payments, that's going to be one of your biggest costs of getting into this file. And so obviously our rates are not 12%. This is what our old rates were. This is going to differ as far as the 12% rate, depending on what part of the country you're in. It's going to differ depending on what type of lender you're using. It's going to differ. There's so many variables that's going to change this rate, but I just want you guys to see exactly how we as lenders calculate a very simple interest rate or interest monthly payment. The next way in which we as lenders are compensated is the origination points. These are essentially, and they're going to range between 2 to 6%. All that means is it's a percentage against the loan. I initially said you guys should never pay a lender before to get into a deal. You know, one of the things as lenders that we do is we do a lot of upfront review on a deal. And so it is up to us to take the information that you provided to us to determine if this deal makes sense or not. And if it does make sense, then we're going to move and dive into it a little deeper. But the origination ranges between 2% to 6%. And some of you are asking, so what separates someone who's paying 2% from someone who's paying 6%? Well, number one, our firm does not charge 6% or 6 points. That's a lot. There are firms that do charge that. But what separates that is the biggest one is experience and credit, specifically experience. The person who has done a good amount of deals over a certain time frame is going to pay less in fees. They're going to get higher leverage or AKA loan amount. And so the person who gets a 2% origination is going to be what we call, they're going to look like the super borrower. They're going to have completed, let's say, 5 or 6 deals over the last couple of years. They're going to have a 720 plus credit score. They're going to have a good amount of liquidity. They've essentially come to the point, or they are at the point where they are going to demand to get the best pricing possible, because this is the person that many lenders salivate over. This is the person where we don't necessarily need to do a lot of hand holding. We don't necessarily have to kind of watch everything that they're doing. We feel confident because they've gone through the process successfully multiple times. Now contrast that with the person who pays 6 points. This person is probably relatively new. They probably have challenged credit. I never say the word bad credit. You'll never hear that from me, but I will say challenged credit, and they don't necessarily have a lot of liquidity. So obviously this person is going to be a riskier play for a lender. However, the lender will still do this deal because the deal makes sense. If the deal makes sense, is the buyer buying a property at a decent price point? Can they sell it at a decent price point? Do the numbers work? And if the numbers work, then absolutely yes. And so, but because they are not as attractive as the super borrower, they are going to get less favorable terms. And the origination points is essentially just a percentage against the loan amount. If you have a $100,000 loan amount, your origination point is 2%. The lender is going to charge you $2,000, and you pay that only at closing. So that will come. That's a part of your closing costs when you're going to the closing. Total project cost. So very simple acronym, TPC. Total project cost. All you're going to do is take the construction, the purchase price of the property, and you're going to add that to the construction budget. You will hear a lot of lenders say that total project cost. Super simple arithmetic, but if you don't get it right, if you don't get this right, you're going to mess up all your other formulas. So you just want to make sure that people get this right. Loan to value. For the most part, this is fairly self-explanatory. If you have an $80,000 loan amount and your property is worth $100,000, your loan to value is 80%. Super simple, right? Many of you guys are very familiar with this. It's a very simple equation that we can use to do that. Loan to cost. So let's spend some time on this. This is one of the biggest terms that a lot of investors have a hard time wrapping their head around. This is the term that we as the lending community do not do a good enough job or well enough job explaining to our borrowers. Loan to cost, as it relates to renovation loans, is another way of saying what exactly is my down payment. What I mean by that is if my loan to cost is 90%, that means that my loan to cost is 90% of the total project cost. Another way of saying that is my down payment is 10%. If my loan to cost is 80%, another way of saying that is my down payment is 20%. If my loan to cost is 70%, another way of saying that is, and you guys are following me, 30%. But here's what a lot of us in the lending community fail to do. We fail to tell a lot of our borrowers loan to cost is subject to the future value of the property. And so many lenders assume that a real estate investor is going to just automatically know that. And that is not the case. So this is where you tend to hear a lot of the real estate horror stories. Oh my God, my lender wanted me to bring $20,000 more 3 days before closing. And they told me some loan to cost LTV mumbo jumbo. And the biggest thing is they'll say, they'll end the conversation with, they suck, they're a scam. And we hear this a lot. And I get a lot of folks who will call me and they'll complain to me about, hey, the lender wanted me to bring XYZ amount of dollars. And I always ask them, so what exactly was your loan to cost? What's your loan to value? What was your loan to ARV? And you'd be surprised how many people could not answer that question. So we want to make sure that people truly understand this question or understand this acronym better. The loan to cost is subject to the after repair value. If you do a very quick calculation, if you take a purchase price of $75,000, and if you add it to the renovation is $25,000, your total project cost is $100,000. If you take $100,000 and you apply a 90% loan to cost, your down payment is going to be $10,000, but your loan amount is going to be $90,000, right? If you take $90,000 and you divide it by 70%, that gives you $128,000. What that $128,000, that essentially states if you buy a property for $100,000, you renovate it, you buy a property for $75,000, you renovate it for $25,000, you should be able to, and your loan to cost is 90%, you're bringing $10,000 to close to as a down payment, but your after repair value should be approximately 130, specifically 128. What will happen is many times newer investors, they tend to be very aggressive with their after repair values. And so they'll say something like, well, my after repair value is going to be $130,000, $150,000, or better yet, it's going to be $128,000. But what happens if it comes back at $128,000? Your $10,000 down payment is essentially going to not necessarily change. But what happens when that after repair value comes back at $120,000? This is when your cash to close starts to increase because they're essentially inversely related. If your after repair value is decreased, then your your down payment is going to increase because we only lend at a certain number. Let me kind of illustrate for you guys. Because I know I said a lot. I know I as well. Okay. Awesome. And one of the things that we would be able to do is, if you guys take a look at this, loan to cost, this particular lets you guys see how we as lenders look at a deal. If your purchase price is $150,000, renovation budget is $80,000, total project cost is $230,000, ARV is $300,000. If your loan to cost is 90%, that means you're bringing 10% of the total project cost, and your loan amount is essentially this number, $207,000. So we're going to either look at the loan to cost or the loan to ARV. And so this is how pretty much every lender in the country is going to look at a renovation loan. It doesn't matter what part of the country they're in. It doesn't matter, what they're going to look at this in the same, almost identically. You could be in New York, you could be in Scottsdale, Arizona, you could be in Los Angeles, Atlanta. So here, the loan amount is $207,000 because I was going off of the cost of the loan. Now, if I go off of the actual ARV, and the ARV is $300,000, all things remaining the same, I'm going to lend at 70% of the ARV, which gives me $210,000. So as a lender, I'm going to go with this number because I want to assume the least risk as possible. Does that make sense? It's always the lower of the two. And this is a calculation that you guys can use. And this is how you could really understand how we as lenders look at deals when we're underwriting a file. So there's no surprises. And it's good to be conservative with your after repair value because many times folks they make this number much bigger and they make the rehab budget much smaller because they believe that they can get away with it. But at the end of the day, we have to kind of reality kicks in. But we just want to make sure that people understand that we always use the lower of the two. The lower loan amount is almost always used. This is how we protect ourselves in these deals. After repair value. So essentially all this means is what the property will be worth once it's fully renovated. That is it. This is the term that a lot of people will use to sell you on a piece of investment real estate, specifically renovation loans. And how do we obtain this number? So what will happen is before the deal closes, we're going to send out an appraiser. The appraiser is going to appraise two things. They're going to appraise, number one, the as-is value of the property. They're going to make certain that you're buying the property at a fair price. You're buying the property at market price. And then we're going to take a look at what can we find comparable sales that justify what you plan on renovating. And how we do that is in our firm, in our office, what we like to do is we like to try to find comparable sales, similar bedrooms, similar bathrooms, similar square footage, preferably built around the same year, properties sold preferably within the last 6 months, preferably sold within half a mile. But what I like to do, even before the half a mile scenario, I like to check to see if it's a active and if it's a hot submarket. I would like to see, and I would recommend that you guys do. So I'm not an appraiser in any way, so I'm just giving you our opinion as to how we like to pull comps. We like to go to the subject property address, and we like to see, are there any comparables that have sold in the same street? So we typically start in the same street. More than likely, we're not going to find comps that sell in the same street. Then we're going to expand. We're going to expand our search to files that have properties that have sold within the same neighborhood. Hopefully, we can find some comps that sold within the same neighborhood. If we can't find properties that have sold within the same neighborhood, we're going to expand our search and we're going to see what properties, are there any comps that have sold within the same school system, preferably within the same zip code. So we like to see, are there comparables that have sold within the same zip code, still within a similar zip code, preferably. And then we're going to, if we can't find comparables there, then we'll take a look at, are there comps that have sold within half a mile? And we're still going to want to try to be in the same zip code. If we can't find comps there, then we're going to expand our search to are there comps that have sold within a mile? So that's how we like to pull comps. We want to make certain that people don't, sometimes what folks was they'll pull comps, but they will jump over a comparable sale that's literally 2 doors down to try to go find one that's maybe half a mile down the road to justify the after repair value. And you cannot do that. You want to be able to find similar comparables because, again, that is one of the things that can kill a deal. We pull comps in our office, but at the end of the day, we always send out an appraiser to pull comps, because appraisers, they will do what is called, they can make an adjustment. And when they make adjustments, that's what we cannot do, because they're out in the field and they can see what's going on. You know, here in Atlanta, it's in some cases pretty interesting. You can be in some neighborhoods where folks are buying properties for $500,000, and literally across the street you've got some very dilapidated homes. So, or in some cases across the street, you may have a $500,000 home in a very up and coming neighborhood, but then literally across the street there's a house that is it's just not habitable. And so we have to make those assessments, and the appraisers make those assessments when they're going onto property. So just be mindful when you're pulling your own comps when you're going to these for after repair values. Maximum allowable offer. This formula has a lot of different names. Some folks call it the 70% rule. Some folks call it the wholesaler rule. This is a formula that we like to use to get what we like to call the PTWs in our world away. Many of you guys are probably asking, what exactly is a PTW? And you guys can use this one. A PTW is a professional time waster. So we want to make certain that we get rid of professional time wasters. And how do we do that? We essentially utilize this formula. This formula is not specific. It is an approximation. It does not work 100% of the time. But what it will do is it will empower you to very quickly and thoroughly review a deal and see if the deal makes sense in some way. And I'm a math guy, so I love numbers, and hence the reason I'm a lender. You just need to have 3 variables to solve this equation. So we want to know what the after repair value is. We want to know, that we as lenders, we lend at 70% of the after repair value. So if someone tells you that the after repair value is going to be $200,000, and you know that we as a lender lend at 70% of the future value, your total project cost should not exceed $140,000. But many times, the person who's trying to sell you on this property is going to probably share with you what they believe is the renovation budget. And so their renovation budget will be, let's say, $40,000. So we know that the most that we can ever ask for this, offer this property is $100,000. We really don't want to go past $100,000, because that's going to essentially disrupt our formula, and it's not going to make it that great of a deal. So on a deal like this, I like to make this an interactive class. If anyone can let me know, what exactly would you want your first offer to be if it's 100, if you know your last offer cannot exceed $100,000? And anyone can answer this question. Okay, well, I'll answer it. I personally wouldn't offer, my first offer would probably be somewhere around $80,000, probably 75. And the reason why I would make that offer is because there are still some variables here that I still have to go out and do some homework on. The biggest one to me would be the repairs, because I don't know if this renovation budget is $40,000, and I don't know if this renovation can be $70,000. I just don't know. Also, the after repair value. I don't know if this after repair value could be $200,000, or it could be $250,000, which would be a great day for me. But conversely, it could also be $170,000. So I just don't know. So before I even make an offer, I want to go back and try to do some numbers. I want to go start with this number actually first, because that person who's giving me this deal is, I have to go into the property with someone who understands construction and renovation to figure this number out. The repair budget is probably going to be the last number you're going to be able to really figure out, because you have to walk the property. But before walking a property, you probably want to kind of figure out what are properties similar in this neighborhood selling for. And so you probably want to start off here at your home office or your office. And then when you walk the property, you have a good idea as to what this number would be. But we just want our investors to really understand, when they're very when you're working in real estate investing, especially renovating properties, you're going to get a lot of deals that come your way. So you have to be very quick and very efficient as to how you respond to these deals. So we want to make sure that you guys have a formula that allows you to figure out, does this deal make sense? Now, this deal, of course, this formula is just, it's not the end all be all. It's not the finish line. It's literally this, you're just getting out of the starting blocks. That's all you're doing with this formula. And so we just want our folks to understand kind of ways to really get into that as well. Rehab draws. So with a rehab draw, for the most part, all this is, let me rephrase that. In a renovation project, there are two transactions that are going to happen at closing. The first one, again, going back to our $75,000 purchase price, is we're going to pay the seller off. We're going to make them whole. They're going to go on their way. They're going to be happy that the property closed. We're going to have a great time. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to put the rehab budget in escrow. So we're going to hold the construction budget, and then we're going to disperse it to the borrower in draws. What that means is the borrower will have to start the renovation with their own resources. And then as we see work being completed, we are going to reimburse the borrower the monies that they put into the project. For example, let's assume you have a $50,000 renovation budget. Many lenders are probably not going to advance you any part of that $50,000 at closing. You are going to have to start work on the property. And the start work is you can go and start, doing some renovation to the property. Let's say you've done $10,000 worth of work to the property. Let's say you put in 10 very expensive doors, each door costing $1,000. And now you spent your own $10,000 and now you want to be reimbursed. We're going to send out an inspector that's going to review the work that's been performed. And if we can confirm that all 10 doors have been fully installed, we are going to reimburse you back $10,000. Simple enough, right? If the inspector tells us, well, only 7 of the 10 doors were installed, now we have a problem, or more of a challenge. There are 3 doors that were not installed. So typically what we're going to happen is the lender is probably only going to reimburse you for $7,000, 7 of the 10 doors that were installed. And the reason for that is because we don't know, number one, we don't know if you plan on using those other 3 doors for another project. That has happened to us. We don't know if you plan on selling those other 3 doors to another investor at a higher amount. That has happened to us. We don't know if someone broke into your investment property the night before and stolen those 3 doors. That has happened to us. So the rehab draw process is like a check and balance system. It allows us to check up on the work that's being performed and allows us to check that the work is being performed. But it also makes certain that everything is essentially done ethically, everything is done honestly, and everything is done in a manner that we feel comfortable with. So there are some lenders that will advance you some monies at closing, but those are far and few between. Back in the day, we used to do that as an industry, but guess what happened? If you advance someone $10,000 out of a $50,000 budget, they look at a property, they look at the $10,000 that they have in their bank account, they look at a property, $10,000, and you just saw a lot of defaults because a lot of folks realized, hey, these loans, and this is back in the day where some of the loans were not being reported on a personal credit score. These loans are not going to be reported on my credit score. I have this $10,000. This is a very difficult project. I'm just going to go ahead and leave. And that unfortunately happened a great deal. So as a result, the industry changed, and now it is why it is the way it is now. So it's on a reimbursement schedule. And so this is one of the biggest items that a lot of new investors have a hard time wrapping their head around until they're actually in the process. And so we just want to make sure that people understand that it is a reimbursement schedule. Comparative market analysis, very simple way of saying the CMA report. This is how we pull comps. You would probably have to have access to the multiple listing service of your respective industry that allows you to see that. That allows you to see that, to make sure that you guys understand that as well. So you can pull comparable sales and make certain that you're pulling the correct comps and things of that sort there also. So with this scenario, one of the things we like to show you guys is just a rehab budget. This is essentially what a rehab budget would look like. Obviously, we want to make sure that you guys as investors truly understand kind of the what things will need, items that you guys will need. You will have to have a construction budget in place. This is one that we created. It's very simple. It's a scope of work as well as a line item budget. This is the scope of work. With the scope of work, all that means is what exactly are you doing to the property? We need to know things such as what's the existing square footage, what will be the finished square footage, what's the existing bedroom bathroom count, what will be after the repair, what will be the finished bedroom bathroom count. We need to know these things because this is what the appraiser is going to use to try to determine what your after repair value comparables will be. So we have to have this information, and as an investor, you definitely want to be able to put this together and get that out there as well. Obviously, we also want to understand things such as, is the property currently occupied? How long will it take for construction? Will the project require permits? Guys, always assume a project needs permits until you're told it doesn't. Here in Atlanta, we have some folks who like to start on projects without getting permits. And then when code enforcement drives around, as they always do, and they notice that your property did not have permits, well, they put a stop work. They put that in Georgia. They put a yellow sticker so the entire neighborhood can see to stop work order, to stop the work on this project. So we want to make sure that you guys do make sure that you got to check to see if you do need permits or not. Are you adding square footage? Are you adding structural work? These are the items that you would need. And these can be filled out by your contractor if they haven't filled out that also. So this is what the scope of work looks like. And this is what the budget looks like. The line item budget will look like. This flows like the way a real estate renovation loan should flow. Essentially, you're going to start off with your permits and or plans. If you're doing any type of remodeling, any type of restructuring to the existing layout, you definitely want to have some type of plan that you, in many cases, are going to have to get approved by the city. Some cases you don't. But of course, you want to have demolition clean out, landscaping, interior, soffit, gutters, siding, porches. You want to kind of have this in place, and it allows us to understand what exactly you're doing and also what do you need per item. You want to be very detailed here because when you're ambiguous with this budget, it's going to be very difficult for you to receive your draws. The more detailed you are, the better it will be when you're looking for your draws to finish this project. So just be mindful of that. Make certain that you're as detailed as possible when it comes to this as well. One of the things we always like to tell folks, especially new investors, how to work with a general contractor. So one of the, we want to make certain that our investors really understand some of the points of working with a GC. When you're working with a general contractor, you want to definitely get their general contractor license. You want to get their general contractor insurance information. You want to check to see the Secretary of State. They should have some information on the Secretary of State of your respective state. Then you want to check for consistency. So if John Thomas Construction is on the Secretary of State, then you probably want to see similar names on the insurance, the license, as well as the Secretary of State. If you don't see consistent, if there's something inconsistent or grossly inconsistent about this, you definitely want to start to do some homework. We want to make certain that our job as lenders is to put you guys in the highest probability of getting deals closed. Not just closed, We want you to get into a deal, but we also want you to remain a real estate investor. And so we want you guys to know how to work with these contractors, but you want to get these deep pieces of information to really understand, just make sure that these things are consistent. Then, of course, you want to get a contractor agreement. The contractor agreement is going to spell out the roles and the responsibilities of the general contractor as well as you, the investor. I would highly recommend that you hire legal counsel to help you draft this contractor agreement. It would be a benefit to you to know that there's an agreement in place. So if anything does happen, you can go back to the agreement and you can point out to what exactly was your responsibility and what exactly was the other person's responsibility. So just something to think of as well. Oh, okay, good stuff. Oh, I'm getting told, get to wrap up as well. So yeah, guys, I know we ran up a little longer than expected. This is the abridged version. I will send Dave the copy of this PowerPoint if you guys are interested in it. It's a lot more information, but apologies for the technical difficulties early on. Definitely like to chat with you guys more about that as well. So absolutely.
All right, Ken, we appreciate your time and all the great information. So yeah, we will definitely help with some follow-up. And Ken, what we will do real quick, if you want to pop your contact info back on there, just to make sure that everybody's got that. And in the meantime, I will go ahead and thank Kenneth for such a great presentation this evening. This will be available on replay very soon as well. So if you missed something or the slides and want to go back, we'll see what we can do about getting some more info for you as well. And again, we thank Kenneth for his time. Look forward to bringing you a lot more right here on REI USA. So Kenneth's contact info is at the bottom. So be sure you get that actually at Baker Collins. We appreciate everybody's time and interest, and we'll be back with a lot more for you from REI USA. Thanks again, everybody.